name is Bobby Vandenbalk, and I'm the Member Services Director at the Exeter Area Chamber of Commerce. And I want to thank you all for being here. What a great crowd. Give yourself a round of applause. I'd like to introduce the Exeter Area Chamber Chairwoman of our Board of Directors, Rachel Ela, also Vice President and Branch Manager of the Stratum Optima Bank. So with that, Rachel.
A little scared of this mic. Okay. Good morning. I want to welcome all of you and thank you for coming to the 2018 Exeter Area Economic Forecast. Now, Chambers of Commerce are organizations that return direct, tangible results to their members by acting as a vehicle to build trust and brand awareness, by offering networking events, and by offering events like this that give not only education but also an opportunity to interact with your legislators and policymakers, both on state and local levels. Chamber membership also carries with it some intangible benefits. And a great demonstration of that is our Powder Keg Beer and Chili Festival. We're all fans here. Not only is it fun for residents, but it also brings visitors from outside of the town's footprint. Those visitors are more likely to come back and dine and shop after the event. That's much better, thank you. The event also contributes a direct financial contribution to Exeter Parks and Rec, which in turn gives more programming and resources to our residents. This single event contributes to the local economy and the quality of life to those that live within the 10 communities that the Chamber serves, which not only contributes to the community, but also contributes to the general ripple effect that is economic development. So with that, I'd like to thank you for supporting the Chamber and for being here for what I think is going to be a very interesting program. I want to thank our sponsors, starting with our underwriter, Optima Bank and Trust. Additional sponsors include Unitil, EnviroVantage, Service Credit Union, Donahue, Tucker, and Chandela, the Exeter Inn and Epic Restaurant, and Images by Alley. The Exeter Inn and Epic Restaurant are always so generous with the community and the nonprofits that host important events like this, and for that we are so generous. I would like to introduce our host this morning, General Manager of Exeter Inn and Epic Restaurant, Tom DeSisto.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and thank you all for being here once again. We love our guests and so many familiar faces at all of these events. It's really great to see you all. We're looking forward to a really strong 2018. We had a wonderful year here at the Exeter Inn and Epic Restaurant and Bar in 2017, and a lot of that's because of a lot of you. And I can't thank you all enough for your continued patronage and everything that the people in this room do to support our community. We know we can't do it without them. You know, the people that are sustaining the businesses, and we love having you all as guests. And, Rachel and Optima Bank are always so good about leaping in and helping out whenever we need them here, and we want to make sure that whenever the Chamber needs us, whenever the town needs us, that we can get back. All right.
In addition to our speakers, who will be introduced momentarily, I would also like to recognize some of the dignitaries that are here with us this morning. Which I have a list. So we have Executive Counselor Russell Prescott. Russell is also a board member with the Chamber. We have New Hampshire State Representative for District 11, Alan Cook. We have New Hampshire State Director of the Division of Economic Development, Will Arvello. And we have Stratham Town Administrator Paul DeShane. Who is also a board member. I want to read a letter from Senator Jean Shaheen. She wasn't able to join us this morning, but she did send along some wishes. Dear friends, I wish I could join you at the 2018 Economic Forecast Breakfast. This morning's gathering is a great opportunity to network with Chamber colleagues and hear from officials about the challenges and opportunities of the coming year. Thank you to the Exeter Area Chamber of Commerce for organizing this constructive event. New Hampshire boasts a relatively strong economy by many measures, including a low unemployment rate and high annual per capita income. Yet our success on the economic front brings a new set of challenges that require new ways of thinking and planning. One of the top concerns I hear from business people is that they have the capacity to hire and grow, but they struggle to often find workers with the right skills or training for the job. It's encouraging to see more and more educators and resource providers in New Hampshire who are eager to work alongside local businesses to beat this tight labor market and meet their needs for skilled, trained workers. It's also reassuring to see chamber members come together at events like this to discuss and share strategies that will yield success for the entire region. This approach is a promising way to sustain continued growth. As your United States Senator and ranking member on the U.S. Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, I am eager to assist in any way I can to help navigate the everyday challenges of running a business. Please do not hesitate to contact me if you have any questions or concerns. Sincerely, Jean Shaheen, United States Senator. The Exeter Area Chamber has a strong leadership team in its board of directors. With us this morning, in addition to Russell and to Paul, we have past chairwoman Pam Cameron of Better Homes and Gardens, the Masiella Group. Our board members, Dave Fitro of Exeter Hospital, Elliot Evans of Edward Jones, John Ring of Jones and Beach Engineering, Keith Lemerise of Taste of the Seacoast, Beth McDonald of Donahue, Tucker and Shandellen, Carla Phillips of Fib Body Transformations, Wanda Bernstein of the Exeter Area YMCA, Tim Nunes of Unitil. And of course, events like this could not happen without our staff, Member Services Director Bobby Vandenbolt and Events Marketing Director Hunter Putnam. Optima Bank has always been a steadfast believer in the chambers that we do business in, as evident by the support that I received to volunteer in a leadership role here in Exeter. Optima has generously underwritten this important event for many years, and I know our leadership looks forward to it every January. A change in schedules has allowed for both of our founders, Dan and Pam Morrison, to be here with us this morning. It is my pleasure to say a few words and to introduce our speakers, Mr. Dan Morrison, who is CEO and President of Optima Bank and Trust.
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm Dan Morrison, Chairman and CEO of Optima Bank and Trust. Optima Bank is very proud to be a longtime member and sponsor of the Exeter Area Chamber. I'd like to give a special recognition to Rachel Ela for stepping up, volunteering. I think with some changes going on at the Chamber, Rachel's gotten a little more than she thought she was signing up for. Thank you, Rachel. Optima Bank first opened for business on January 29th, 2008. so this week we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary, the day before yesterday. We celebrated on Monday by opening our 7th location, a full-service branch, brand new construction in Dover, New Hampshire. So if Dover is on your traffic pattern, I invite you to please stop by and visit us there. We have a great staff. We're fully staffed, fully operational there in Dover, right up near the Weeks traffic crossing. Over the last 10 years, Putnam Bank has been one of the fastest growing banks in the country. In fact, in 10 years, we've invested over $1 billion in our communities. Investments in the form of loans to small businesses to grow and expand and create new jobs, loans in the forms of loans to individuals and families to build and buy homes here in our community. $1 billion, over $1 billion in 10 years. It's a big number. It's my honor this morning to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is Darren Winham, the Town of Exeter's Director of Economic Development. Mr. Winham has spent his career in community development. He began his career in Mid-Coast, Maine, and then spent time working on economic development for Lassen County, California, as well as Barre and Waterbury, Vermont. Mr. Winham also spent some time working for the U.S. Department of Labor in Washington, D.C. His areas of expertise include working with prospective new businesses and expansion of existing businesses. He leads the Town of Exeter's economic development efforts, and in his time here, he has significantly increased the town's tax base. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Darren Winham.
All right, don't let it throw me that it sounds like an MRI going on in the background. So a little over a month ago, Todd DeLuca calls me, and he says, do you know the Commissioner of Business and Economic Affairs? And I say, sure. And he says, do you think you get him to speak at the economic forecast? And I say, yeah, sure, I think so. And then he says, we're going to need another speaker. And I said, okay. And then he says, how about you? I said, well, how about me? And that's all we talked about. Then he quit. So he moved on, okay. So for the last week, myself and Rachel and Hunter and Bobby have been trying to figure out what I should say up here. And so because we just determined it was a regional crowd, I wasn't just going to speak about Exeter stuff. So what we thought we'd do is talk about economic development tools and how Exeter's use those tools, and then maybe you folks in other areas could potentially use those tools as well in your area. So I just want to start off and say that the state of New Hampshire doesn't collect taxes like other states. So they don't have the same resources other states do to provide economic incentives. I'm going to run through them really quick and just give you a list of what they do, the resources and tools that we have access to. I think the state does a fantastic job. I think they're going to do even better with Taylor and the governor, and Will, of course. So I'm going to run through those really quick. Regionally, we have Rockingham Economic Development Corporation, which is a fantastic help to us. Great resources. Laura's great. The state uses economic revitalization zones, which we do have one on the Epping Road. They have the Business Industry Association of New Hampshire, which is basically the state chamber. We have, of course, the Business and Economic Affairs, Job Training Fund, Research and Development Tax Credits, New Hampshire Procurement Technical Assistance Program, which is PTAP, International Trade Resource Center, the CDFA, which Taylor used to be the head of that. And of course, in this area, we have the Great Bay Community College Business and Training Center. And then we have our federal assistance, the Small Business Administration, and then Small Business Development Centers. And I want people to understand that if you're doing economic development, the SBDC is a really important resource. We can't provide, as local folks, and even the state can't provide what they do. They will sit down with businesses, they will sign confidentiality agreements, they will go through top to bottom your finances and sign non-disclosures and help businesses in ways we can't. So we often access that resource. Of course, we have the Department of Commerce and SCORE, which is a senior corps of retired executives. For those of you who know Casey Cargill, who owns Lexi's, very successful in Exeter, Portsmouth, elsewhere. He used those folks a lot when he started out. And of course, there's new market tax credits, which I would let anybody besides me explain, or banks possibly. But so the two tools that we really use in Exeter are 79E, the Community Revitalization Tax Relief Incentive Program, and Tax Increment Financing Districts. And I'm going to run through those programs, how they work, how Exeter's use those, and then take questions on how we could perhaps use those in other areas. Excuse me. So 79E, what that is a property tax relief on substantial rehabilitation of qualifying structures. The program seeks to encourage investment in town centers and to rehabilitate underutilized buildings in these areas. So first, step one is the community has to go ahead and adopt it, right? And many New Hampshire communities have done that successfully, some more successfully than others. Some, I think, Concord as an example, has gone too far with theirs, and some of the locals there complain about how that's employed. Exeter's done too, and we're trying to be very judicious about how we do it. Learn from other folks, success and failures. So in order for a building to qualify for it, it has to pass 3 tests. First, it must be in an eligible district, which when you create the district, the town creates a district, it determines where the areas it wants to use 79E. Then it has to do what's called substantial rehabilitation, which is rehabilitation must cost at least 15% of the building's pre-rehabilitated assessed value, or $75,000, whichever is less. And finally, and most importantly, qualifying property must provide a public benefit. So what does that mean, public benefit? It enhances the economic vitality of the area, it improves a culturally or historic structure, and promotes development, or promotes development of the area, providing for efficiency, safety, and a greater sense of community. So a few facts about the way this law and how it's employed. It's very subjective to interpretation by the governing body, which is an extremely unique thing for economic development tools. A lot of times economic development tools are very difficult to navigate, very hard for the users, not only the service providers, but also the applicant to try to get through, and then the follow-through sometimes is very onerous, especially at the federal level. But 79E is not like that at all. It really allows communities to put a tool there that would enhance the ability for people that want to invest in these buildings. So I love this tool, by the way. It also requires a public hearing, so it's very public. It provides opportunity to further define the qualifying structure and also the parameters. The town that adopts this can set standards. They could say, okay, we're only going to go 5 years no matter what. We are going to expand qualifying structure to mean more than just what the state allows, because we have unique situations in our town that we want to see people invest in. Another very important thing is the property owner has to grant a covenant, which then has to be filed with, in our case, the county, to say that we are going to provide this public benefit that we're, in our application, we're saying we're providing a public benefit. We're going to provide that public benefit and put a covenant in place to provide that benefit for at least the length of the incentive. The town can, by the way, make that double. Exeter's only gone the amount, that many years we've provided for relief. And this is the most important one people have to realize. Applicants must have an approved application prior to construction commencement. So it takes 60 days once a person applies. In our town, we turn this around very quickly. But 60 days, one could go through that process before the town before the town would hear it, and then 45 more days before the town can make a decision. And most towns, I think they would want to do that as quickly as possible, especially if the construction's about to start. So, excuse me. Duration of the tax relief period. So, if you have a qualifying structure, whether it's a rehabilitation or whether it's a replacement, in other words, let's say there's a fire on a historic structure or something, a town can grant from 1 to 5 years of relief, all the discretion in the world. They can also add 2 more years if they're creating new residential units. I know a lot of towns would like to see residential units in their downtown. Up to 4 years, not to include it, but up to 4 years if that includes affordable housing. And finally, an additional 4 years can be added for tax relief for a qualifying structure that is listed on or determined eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places, the State Register of Historic Places, are located within an important to a locally designated historic district. We certainly have that in our downtown, and a lot of New Hampshire towns do. So, how has Exeter used this tool? We've used it twice, most recently on Monday. The first time we used it was with the old Loaf and Ladle, which is becoming the Sea Dog. Steve Caneb owns that building. His company is Catamount. Exeter provided 9 years of tax relief there. The reason the Board of Selectmen did that is Steve Caneb, before he even applied, put in $1 million in that piece of property. And I think a lot of people in this room know that that property sat for a long time, it was underutilized, and we're very excited now to see such a very important location right on the water, excuse me, I'm battling a cold, and as people come into the downtown. So that's a very important piece of property for the town of Exeter and our growth and our future. And so he's putting another $1 million into it now as we speak, and he's using this incentive to help him do it. So that's great. The other one that we approved on Monday was a company called Vino e Vivo, Wine is Life, Tony Calandrello at 163 Water Street. This is a very unique one because it is a condoed property. And so the town had to look at this and say, okay, how are we going to apply this incentive? Do we want to see people invest in our downtown? Yes. Do we want them to invest in historic properties? Yes. And then do we want to say, how much of our downtown is condo? A lot of it is, and a lot of towns are. And so I think in their wisdom, the select board said, okay, we're going to give this gentleman 7 years. Here's why. The property is only worth $107,000. He's putting $104,500 in. And so they gave him a little more than I think that they would otherwise give, even though it's not a lot of money necessarily to invest, a lot to me, probably not a lot to others, but a lot compared to the value of the property. So in this case, excuse me, the town thought that was a great idea. One thing I will point out, and the pitfall of this incentive, is what I call the but-for clause. What that means is would the development otherwise happen if the incentive wasn't in place? And the select board asked that of Tony on Monday. They said, will you do this if we don't give it to you? We are going to do it anyway. And he said, I would still do it. He was very honest about this. I would still do it. However, I wouldn't do it to the degree I'm willing to do it. He described everything he's doing, and he's basically taking 1970 and 1980 construction on the inside of this property, sheetrock off and exposing rock, exposing brick, and it's going to cost him a lot of money to do that. And he explained why this will help him do it. And so I think if towns look at these things and look at this incentive and other incentives that way, where if we are getting the benefit down the road, it's worth it. And the last one I'll talk about is tax increment financing district. I'm not saying Exeter knows how to use this, but we know how to use it. You did a really good job, I think. Excuse me. So I'm going to try to make a complicated thing pretty simple. TIF allows for taxes generated from new development within the district to be used to create infrastructure to support the development. In return, the infrastructure improvements serve to spur additional development, which generates new tax dollars and jobs. Once the tax dollars are used and the improvements and the bond is, once the improvements are done, the bond's paid off, the TIF dissolves, and all future tax dollars go to the general fund, benefiting all taxpayers. So basically, this is an investment in self. So very quickly, how you do is you designate the area, you adopt a TIF plan, a TIF advisory board, which provides provides updates, keeps the whole thing together, and provides recommendations to the select board, in our case, city council and others. And also a TIF financing plan. Then you bond, then you construct your infrastructure, you see your economic growth, the TIF account grows, and you pay off the bond, and then you start having a lot more money go in the general fund, hopefully more jobs. That's how it's supposed to work. The way Exeter has employed it is we've put this on a 1.5 mile stretch of Epping Road, Route 27, roughly between Brentwood Road to Route 101. The great news is before I took this job, and before Exeter had an economic development person, they had an economic development commission that put an ERZ, an economic revitalization zone, over about 700 acres in an area of Exeter that had sat stagnant for an extremely long time. Very quickly, what the ERZ is an economic revitalization zone, is that allows qualified businesses that are expanding by investing capital or hiring additional employees to to be eligible for tax credits against New Hampshire state business profit and business enterprise taxes. So if you're growing and you're in an ERC, you can get these incentives, and they're definitely very helpful. So Exeter created this TIF zone. It's 587 acres. And it's basically the last large-scale commercial development possibility for Exeter. And we knew that about half of it, a little more than half of it, needed this infrastructure. Those of you who know Exeter know that the water and sewer goes up Route 27 north and stops at Continental Drive. And then it goes in Continental Drive, but doesn't go north of that. So all the property that's between Continental Drive and Route 101 on the right and the left, and there's hundreds and hundreds of acres, don't have infrastructure. And we didn't want to just go ahead and try to bond for that willy-nilly. We decided, let's create a TIF, let's see some growth out there, and then let's use those tax dollars, create that fund, see the increment. Here's the amount of money that that area is generating. So Exeter's going to continue to get that amount of money for the length of the TIF. And then any new development, which is the increment, right, in tax dollars, goes into the TIF fund. That money then pays off a bond that we go to put the infrastructure in. That'll help us create the development. So in our case, excuse me, our infrastructure is water and sewer going from Continental up to Route 101, and then a new road with water and sewer going into Shaftmaster's property and up to Scott Carlisle's 18 acres, which is kind of an interesting parcel that was almost isolated, basically, and overlooks 101. Very strategic location. Also a pump station and electric to get to the pump station. That infrastructure will cost $6.85 million, and the break-even point is $23.5 million. So here's some very good news for the Exeter TIF. So we put this thing in 2015, so you have 2 years of development, 2016 and 2017, going into this fund. We already have $500,000 in that, which means at the very least we're going to have $500,000 each year. That's plenty more than enough to pay off a bond, 20-year bond, to do the infrastructure we want. So we're way, way ahead of the game. And that basically was done because we, among other projects, among smaller projects, we got gourmet gift baskets, C3I, expansions of FW Web and Northeast Distribution, and 91 market rate apartment housing complex at 80 Epping Road. And this doesn't take into account the dorms that are being constructed at the rinks and other ongoing projects. There are a lot of good things coming up in that area. I was going to go through them. I know my time is short. Very happy to answer any questions about that. I just want to close on one note. Economic development tools are very effective, but towns must be very discerning and very strategic, as in the end, it's public dollars. We have to account for it, and we have to explain to the public what we're doing with it and why. So that's my presentation.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you. Our next speaker this morning is the Honorable Taylor Caswell, Commissioner of the New Hampshire Department of Business and Economic Affairs. Prior to his appointment as the Commissioner, Mr. Caswell served as Executive Director of the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority, the statewide public agency that provides technical and financial resources to community and economic development programs. Before that, he was a regional administrator at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development during the George W. Bush administration. He's also been a congressional staffer and was co-founder of the New Hampshire Clean Tech Council. Taylor is also founder of Parker Mountain Trails, a nonprofit network of 25 miles of hiking and biking trails in Littleton, New Hampshire. When he can, he likes to spend free time mountain biking, climbing, hiking, and skiing in the rugged White Mountain terrain. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Honorable Taylor.
I love how when somebody puts honorable in front of my name, the whole room laughs. How does that happen?
That is your official.
Yeah, that's right. It comes with the job, I guess. So let's see, economic forecast. Workforce.
Yes.
That's about it, right? But I'll elaborate. Thank you for having me here today. Thank you, Darren, for running through all of that. That's there's actually more there than I think we realize sometimes, and you're absolutely right. Communities that have someone like Darren who's in charge of understanding those different provisions, those different incentives, leveraging them with other resources, federal resources, private resources, whatever they may be. That's how you get things done. You know, in New Hampshire we have a small government, we have low taxes, and we have a lot of other benefits. But one thing that it does do is it forces us to be very creative, and it forces us to be very strategic, and it forces us to be very innovative. And I think that shows in our economy. And despite having a lot of the, not the same resources that a state like Massachusetts or New Jersey or other states might have, our economy is doing very, very well. I think as a result of the type of creativity and innovation that we see here in Exeter and that Darren is implementing on a daily basis. So you're very lucky to have him. I thought maybe what I'd do today is talk to you a little bit about this whole BEA thing, this Business and Economic Affairs thing, and what it's all about and what we're doing and why we're here. And then maybe chat about a couple of the key issues that I'm seeing coming for 2018, and maybe a few other little tidbits thrown in there. But really, the Department of Business and Economic Affairs is brand new. I mean, we've been in existence since July of this year. The legislature passed in the budget, effectively splitting up the old Department of Resources and Economic Development. And whenever I say that, at this point in this speech, I always say that yes, we have finally gotten rid of the acronym DREAD in New Hampshire government, the acronym world. And so what we did was we came up with an idea to give some singular focus to economic development. To say, you know, as a state, this is really an important issue everywhere. It has always been part of a larger organization at DREAD, where you had things like state parks and forest and lands and other things. They're all very, very important to the whole picture of the state of New Hampshire. And for those of us who actually use and enjoy those facilities, they're extremely, extremely important. But the governor and the legislature felt very strongly that we needed to be able to have a little bit more focus. And so what we did was we took the two divisions within DREAD, the Division of Economic Development and the Division of Travel and Tourism, and we coupled those together and created the Department of Business and Economic Affairs. And in a lot of ways, that makes a lot of sense. At first you're like, travel and well, it's our second largest industry, first of all. And second of all, they're the best marketers we have in the state government, right? And marketing to workforce, marketing to businesses, marketing to people who are coming here for the weekend or for, you know, a couple of days, it's really the same skill set. And so in a lot of ways, what we're doing is providing a marketing tool to local entities, local officials like Darren and others, to be able to bring those businesses, and then they take it from there. And that's a way that we've sort of structured it here in the state of New Hampshire. And so as we went through the process of how are we going to do this, we took a lot of these advisory commissions, we took a lot of the stuff that had been bolted on over years, and we consolidated all of those. And we created a new thing called the Council of Partner Agencies. And this is a big thing to me. I mean, it sounds sort of bureaucratic and the rest of it because you've got a bunch of state agencies working together. But the whole point, as I started out with, is to be able to be more innovative, and be more creative, and be more collaborative. And so this was an opportunity to really put that into action. And so we created this council. The council is made up of my department. We have the the Business Finance Authority, which anyone who's done some work in business expansion and capitalization and bond work in New Hampshire knows the Business Finance Authority. The Community Development Finance Authority, the CDFA, the organization I used to run. The New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, for reasons we'll discuss in a minute. And then the community college system in New Hampshire. So what we did was we lined up agencies that have a lot to do with the most crucial issues facing New Hampshire's economy right now: housing, workforce, training, community development, and business financing and access to capital. And so right now what we do is now we have these monthly meetings where we're sitting around a table talking about cohesive strategy around how can we address these issues as a group and give some forward momentum in that innovative culture that we're trying to create. Tied to that is the other requirement that was in the legislation, which is that we create a new 10-year state economic development plan. Now, You might think that's a normal thing, but that has not been done in the state of New Hampshire for a long time. And when they were done in basically 2-year increments. And as Darren will tell you, anyone who's done any economic development project, 2-year increment is a pretty narrow window when you're talking about something as substantial as a state economic plan. And so we're now in a 10-year window. We're beginning that right now. We've brought on our new state economic development director, Will Orbello, who is going to be leading that effort for the state. So you'll certainly be hearing more from Will on that as we go through. And so now we have the tools in place to really start advancing these sorts of things. And so we're doing it in an environment that's actually not a bad time to be doing this. We have a 2.6% unemployment rate in New Hampshire right now, which is among the lowest in the country, if not the lowest. We are back at the top of the fastest growing economies in New England. The last 2 or 3 quarters, we've beaten out all the other states. Our biggest competition, of course, is Massachusetts, but we do grow it. We are growing currently at a faster rate than they are. Our poverty rate is the lowest in the United States of America, and we are seeing growth in all sorts of new areas, in new investment, in new sectors in the state of New Hampshire. And the one that I always like to bring up is there's a project going on in Manchester called the Advanced Regenerative Manufacturing Institute. Now, this is not something that's just exclusive to Manchester. I mean, this is going to end up being, if it is successful, a statewide, it's going to have a statewide impact. What it is it is the result of a large investment made by the Department of Defense in 18 different areas around the country to establish new manufacturing centers for specific new technologies that have some relationship to either service to veterans or to national defense. But really, as most of those types of technologies are, it allows for a new growth of a new sector very strategically. And so regenerative medicine, or as we call it, biofabrication, is basically the ability to take the technology that is currently available and figure out a way how to take, if you have a malfunctioning kidney, for instance, take an MRI of the kidney, get all the measurements of your kidney. They'll take it back. They'll effectively 3D print a copy of your kidney. They'll take some of your cells. They'll re-engineer the cells. They'll make them kidney cells. My wife is a scientist. She knows how that works. I don't know how it works. They re-engineer the cells and they grow them on that kidney. And over a very short period of time, all of a sudden, you have a brand new kidney. And they'll put that back in. Now think about what the impact of that is on our healthcare costs, on our healthcare systems, where instead of trying to maintain someone on dialysis, and not only, if you've ever had to deal with someone who's on that, that is not a pleasant experience. So you avoid that, and you avoid the huge cost that goes with that. Right? So right there, that is a fundamental game changer, and it's happening in New Hampshire. Right? There's over $300 million worth of investment already going into that project. We have partners from across the United States. Every large academic institution you can think of is, first of all, jealous that we got that. And so they're showing up and they're very present. I mean, places like the Mayo Clinic, Stanford University, MD Anderson in Houston, go right down the list of all the major institutions. And that is attracting companies, and that is attracting workforce, and it is attracting a whole new industry around this biotech and medtech sector that we're seeing such great growth in all across the state. And so a lot of what we're doing on the state level is helping and facilitating and enabling that to continue to occur and working. It's being run by Dean Kamen, who you've all heard about, and who knows how to do this sort of thing. And so we're very confident in their capabilities, and we're not getting in his way. You do not get in Dean Kamen's way. Right? That is rule number one. But we're working very closely with them. The other number that I'll throw out there that a lot of people haven't heard much about is the fact that last year was the first time in 13 years that New Hampshire's net migration numbers were on the positive side. Wow. Right? So that means we were getting more people here than we're leaving. That is a bit of surprising news to a lot of people. And there is this undercurrent a lot of times in New Hampshire that, we're never going to get anybody to come here. This is so hard. It really isn't. It really isn't. We're really seeing progress. It's flowing through a lot of these A lot of these new sectors that we're seeing, whether it's the med tech sector, whether it's the IT, or whether it's, whatever the case may be, medical manufacturing, we have really high growth industry. We did a talent, what did they call it, a survey last March. And they worked with potential employees who would consider moving to New Hampshire. They asked them, what do you think is the #1 industry in New Hampshire? 83% responded forestry.
Wow.
It's good. I love forestry. I grew up in the North Country, but it's not #1, right? And so it's really important for part of when we go back to the whole marketing thing that we're going to be doing, is to tell the story that New Hampshire has this very, very high-tech, very sophisticated economy, very sophisticated and highly qualified workforce that is a great place for people to come to work here, but also to run a business here. Right? So I point all these things out because there is great opportunity on the state level and on the local level to tell this story, that New Hampshire is not just a forest products state, that we have a lot more to offer people, and we have places to offer people to live, whether it's Exeter, or Manchester, or Keene, or Littleton, or Plymouth, or Laconia, wherever you want to live, right? And they're all very different experiences. So, you heard a little thing about this Amazon thing we did. You might have, I don't know. That was a very interesting experience. And in a lot of ways, it was a very important experience, because what it did was it enabled us in a very short period of time to pull together a whole host of different individuals. We had people in business. We had different community leaders from that central southern New Hampshire area. We had other government agencies that got involved, and we came up with, in the space of about 4 weeks, a brand new, effectively, business marketing plan for the state of New Hampshire. We dusted off a lot of the old stuff that we've had around for years. When you live here in New Hampshire, you forget what a big deal no income and no sales tax is. But when you're a company like Amazon or Fred's Flower Shop, and you're thinking about moving to New Hampshire, and all of a sudden all that stuff you have to buy in your shop, you don't have to pay a tax on it, that's a big deal. And when you're a big, huge mega company like Amazon, it's a wicked big deal, right? But I think the thing that that really drives it home, and it's not sales tax, but it's income tax. So you remember like 2 or 3 weeks ago, the guy from Merrimack, I don't even know who it was, but the store in Merrimack that sold the winning Powerball ticket, I think it was like $560 million. I mean, it's a big number, and it was one winner. So we went through this little exercise at the office and tried to calculate what the state tax would be on that for if that poor soul happens to not be a resident of the state of New Hampshire. And so for Vermont and Maine, it's around a $50 million state tax bill. All right? All of my friends in Concord, $50 million. Imagine what we could do with that. Right? But Massachusetts was like $39 million. I mean, it goes right down the thing. In New Hampshire, it was zero. Right? And so then take that and make that a company. And all of a sudden, that $560 million investment you make, whether it's in buildings or capital expenditures or new equipment or big, huge servers that you have for your company, and you're talking big, big incentives. And incentives that don't go away because you didn't perform or you didn't do this, you didn't do that. It's there, right? And it's not going anywhere. Right, Councilor? So that experience really was great in the sense that it allowed our new department to consolidate, to figure out, to put this all together and come up with a new marketing plan. It is available on nheconomy.com, and we are in the process of final stages of de-Amazoning that same proposal so that we can actually take it and fill in any company we want. And it is a nice thick piece of marketing material that has data, but it also has, and it positions the state of New Hampshire and what we offer as a state to businesses. And it's been going great. I mean, we've really used it in a lot of different places, and we've got a lot of very positive feedback on it. So I do not in any way regret putting in that response to Amazon. It was well worth it. And not to mention the fact we got a ton of media attention for this. Depending on who you talk to, the Boston media was completely beside themselves because we happened to point out that they have bad traffic in Boston, and that it's really, really expensive to live there. Right? That was like, so all of a sudden headlines, New Hampshire trashes Boston. Right? And in fact, the day that they did that, on the front page was a story above the fold about how tour buses are like, we're not going to Boston anymore because we can't drive around. There's nowhere to go. There's too much traffic. So anyway, the best part of that was every time they put that in their stories, whether it was the Boston Business Journal, the Herald, or the Globe, or whatever, like, you can read this horrible thing for yourself. Click here. Meanwhile, we're watching the click numbers on our website go ding, 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 ding. And so many people are getting an opportunity to see that plan and that strategy that we put out there. So it's a little silly, but we got a lot of attention for that. So again, it was well worth the effort. Okay, so 3 big things I see this year coming forward that we're going to really need to be dealing with. I started with the biggest one, workforce, right? Workforce is what we all need. We have 16,000 open positions in the state of New Hampshire right now at a 2.7% unemployment rate. Those numbers don't line up, folks. We need to have people. We need to have people, and we need to have training programs that are tailor-made for, well, in my job, everything's tailor-made. But we need to have customized solutions. And that's a big reason and a big thing that Will has had a lot of experience in doing, is working with the community college system, working with individual employers and saying, we're a small state, we have great resources, we have great academic institutions, and we have really great companies. So why not get everybody together and figure out how we can make more customized solutions to train individuals for the jobs and for the economy that we need here in the state of New Hampshire. And it's different from each part of the state, but we can absolutely do that. And we're moving in that direction. We're going to be hopefully coming out in the next few weeks with some new programs around workforce development in the state of New Hampshire because of the priority that we're putting on this. We're taking a lot of state programs that are out there right now, and we're using the fact that we now have the Department of Business and Economic Affairs, whose sole job is economic development, and we're going to try to consolidate those into almost a one-stop shop sort of scenario where we will be able to be the place where we can help find customized solutions for our employers to develop that workforce that they need, either from afar or here in New Hampshire. And I would point out that the other part of that this is going to happen is we really need to have strong academic partnerships. We cannot do this without the university system, without the private colleges in the state, without the community college system. Anywhere you go in the country and you look at what has been a successful economic development program, it has been the result of strong partnerships with the academic institutions. So that's another part. And then we're going to really have fun with a whole new marketing strategy. And I say fun because one of the benefits of having our travel and tourism people with us in our new division, in our new department, that's right, our new department, is the fact that they have been promoting the state for decades, and they have been doing it especially successfully in the last couple of years. We've rebranded the whole tourism market. If you haven't seen visitnh.gov, it is an award-winning website. It is a website that drives a lot of activity, and we fully utilize all the digital marketing techniques that are available to people right now. And if any of you have ever done any really in-depth digital marketing, it is almost scary how much you can know and how much you can do. So for instance, we're looking at being able to attend virtually things like large trade shows. We don't have a big budget to go to big trade shows in different countries or around the United States. So we are targeting, geo-targeting, using virtual presences at those trade shows and targeting people who are there with New Hampshire messaging and open your business in New Hampshire. Click here to find out more. So all of those sorts of tools are starting to coalesce into a more specific outreach program and plan that is geared more at workforce recruitment than business recruitment right now. But we're not giving up on business recruitment, but we need people. And the last thing I'll mention is the regulatory environment. Well, that's the last one, but the regulatory environment is one that is, everybody always brings it up when we talk about economic development. It is a constant renewal process. You don't just do regulatory reform and say, done with that. It's a constant sort of thing because there's changing needs in the state, there's changing needs in localities, there's an ability. A good example of this right now that I'm dying to get into is the whole craft beverage regulatory regime. Right now, our state is at a severe disadvantage to Maine and Vermont. When we're talking about new craft breweries, new, have anybody been to the Tamworth Distillery up in Tamworth? That, new distilleries Even the wine industry, they'll get there. They'll get there. But I think we are at a severe disadvantage, and it is our own fault. It is our own regulatory fault, and so we're going to be looking at that through a steering committee that I chair over in Concord. Last thing, and then I'll shut up. Housing. All of this is really, really going to hit a brick wall at some point if we don't have appropriate housing for the workforce that we're trying to recruit. Right? We talk a lot about the whole millennial crowd that we're trying to attract. Yes, we need to attract the millennial crowd. Millennial crowds don't have anywhere to live in a place like the Upper Valley. Aunt Edna's basement is only appealing for a certain amount of time. You have to be able to find appropriate housing for that type of workforce that matches the type of businesses that are available there. Here we are in a world where everything is customized, right? Your phone is customized, your car is customized, you can order anything you want online and have it in 2 days. Our economy has to reflect that, and if we don't, we're just going to be an old dinosaur, and it's not going to. So when we talk about housing, we have to be able to say, what are the types of housing that we need? Does it need to have some sort of subsidy in it? Can it be market rate housing? How much of this, how much of that? There's data, there's so much granular data on all of this. We need to make smart decisions around that and make those investments really work for our economy. Okay, so I was going to say a bunch of other stuff, but everyone's down there getting on. And we have some opportunity for some questions. But suffice to say, I think that there is a lot to be very, very happy about in our current economy. There is a lot to see as opportunity. I think those of us who do this on a regular day fully recognize there are gaps, right? There are gaps in the state. But now is the time to figure out and work on solutions that address those gaps and make sure that, in economic development we say there are no such things as straight lines. Everything is wavy, and it will be wavy again. But now is the time to be building a sustainable economy so that those waves are closer to straight. And so we're working on that, and we are really looking forward to continuing to working with chambers like Exeter Chamber and with professionals like Darren around the state to make that happen. So thank you very much for having me.
For some questions for both Darren and for Taylor. Anyone in the crowd that would like to discuss something? Yes.
Hi, this is for Taylor. Kate Miller from Exeter. I'm 100% with you in terms of bringing together the educational resources to boost our workforce and have highly trained workers. One component that I think would get us a twofer in terms of training workers and making communities attractive for people moving into New Hampshire is reinstating the building aid for public schools. I think that was discontinued in the economic downturn. It's been about 10 years, I think. And that's proved a real hurdle for communities like Newmarket, which has a really challenged infrastructure there. And getting that fixed and making it an attractive community, it's been harder without building aid. Is there any move to bring back building aid?
Well, I mean, we're in the middle of we're going to be starting a new budget cycle in this coming summer and planning for that. I think important in these conversations is the ability to tie the need for specific types of resources to specific outcomes. And so a good example on this very subject would be, I was up in Colebrook a couple of weeks ago, talking with a number of people in town there. Colebrook, if you don't know, is like on the tip. It's not Pittsburgh, but it's pretty close. And they're losing a lot of population. A lot of younger people are leaving, and so they're starting to have some serious conversations around consolidating school districts. And one of the things that I brought up is the fact that this presents an opportunity, because now you have White Mountains Community College that's up there. You have an opportunity to start looking at, again, this sort of customized pathway for kids in that school district to be able to line up towards the types of jobs that are available in the North Country in New Hampshire. And there's more than people think there are. There's lots of good jobs. There's manufacturing jobs. They're not doing the paper mills anymore, and it's not all in forestry products. But there are lots of good jobs there that you can take advantage of the linkages and the pathway that you're trying to do. So what I'm saying is that when we start talking about things like building aid, and we start talking about investments like that in our education system, it's really, really helpful to not just do that in a vacuum, but to say we want to do it because it's going to get us here. And we know why that's going to get us there and how that's going to be successful for our economy as a whole. So this state needs to be a lot better about making these linkages. And that's one of the things that we try to do in the department, is try to make, what are those linkages to our economic well-being as a state?
Andrew Cameron. Andrew Cameron, I'm a local realtor. The question for Taylor. What is the state doing exactly to encourage more low and medium income housing? Because I see it every day in my industry. You talked about how there's about to hit a brick wall. I'm here to tell you, we hit that brick wall about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, the issue of housing, so that's why we have the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority on our council. And, you know, I was the regional administrator at HUD back in, well, it was a while ago. But it was, the issue of affordable housing is unquestionably a big part of the scenario that we have to be addressing as a state. And in a lot of cases, that has to involve public investment. Because if we want to have communities that are not turned into just places where only people with a lot of money can live in them, and how is that going to be a sustainable economy for that particular region? And you absolutely, you can see that happening in this area of the state. There's other areas of the state where it is on the brink of happening. The interesting challenge, though, is for a state, or for a locality particularly, is how do you implement a policy like that, short of the dollar figure, but how do you say, we're kind of, this growth is too much. We need to not grow so much. That is a difficult conversation to have, if you're honest about it, because everybody really wants to be able to see things move forward. And so housing and being able to accommodate everybody within your community becomes a very serious challenge from a policy standpoint in that scenario, but also from a dollar standpoint. A lot of other states will put a lot of money into things like affordable housing. In New Hampshire, it takes a little bit more work. You've got to put together, again, that creative financing solution. And that it can be done. We've seen it done around the state. But it also has to involve the local governments supporting that type of development. And that, more often than the dollar figure, is the challenge.
Okay.
Just a quick question about the 16,000 open positions in the state of New Hampshire. I'm curious if you can talk about the categories of those types of jobs and the average rate of pay for those kinds of jobs.
I'm not so good on the average rate of pay, but I can tell you that the largest by far is healthcare. Right? There are big openings across the state in the healthcare industry. And then after that, we get into the information, the IT jobs, tech jobs. Med tech is a separate category, and that's growing at a really fast clip. So, I mean, those are the top 3 right now. But healthcare, far and away, the largest. I would say probably, I might be wrong, but it's probably close to 50% of those 16,000 are healthcare.
And those are like the lower paid positions,
Oh, they're
like
everything.
direct service providers.
It's nurse. It's right up, nurse practitioners right on down to LNAs, and yes, support staff so much, but jobs in most cases that require training, which in most cases are better paid. Anyone have a question for Dennis?
Just given what you just said about that this gap are jobs that require training, what are the strategies or the discussions that are being had about the fact that, as I understand it, New Hampshire, graduating students from New Hampshire have some of the highest debt when they get out of our schools?
Yeah, well, a bunch of stuff on that. Student debt relief is one issue we are looking very seriously at. And whether we're looking hopefully at some sort of, and there is legislation in the legislature this year to hopefully pilot some sort of new approach to that. So I get that piece. I think the other issue that we need to consider too, again, going into that longer term strategy, is, we need to be able to create more of these. We have, the number of students that are leaving New Hampshire that are looking for a 4-year college experience. We lead the nation in the export of those types of students, right? And so there's lots of reasons for that. But I say all the time, when we talk about a 10-year state economic development plan, which is kind of where my head is on a lot of this stuff, that means kids that are in 6th grade right now are going to be in the workforce at the end of the plan that we're writing this year. And so it can't just be the higher education component. It can't just be, the graduating seniors right now. We need to be looking at our entire K through 12 system, and that's to your point, is making investments in education will pay off. It absolutely will. And I mentioned that whether it's the academic partnerships that we have, or whether it's growing students that are going to be able to be connected to jobs here in New Hampshire. And I'm not saying that's the case at every time. I mean, I left New Hampshire and came back. There's great value to that, and I'm sure a lot of you did the same thing. And so it is an individual preference that we sometimes cannot overcome with policy. But I think as a general rule, we need to be able to say, kids that are coming through the K through 12 system in New Hampshire should be coming out with a certain capability, and then we can link them to training within the state that is affordable, hopefully, and that we will be able to employ them on the far end of that. So everyone uses pathways. That's the big word these days, but I think it's actually a pretty good description of what we need to do.
And one last question. Are we all set?
Oh, yeah. I was wondering, I'm Paul from Hampstead. I was wondering, is financial aid targetable to positions that we need? I've never heard that talked about. So if you need healthcare, can you do more financial aid to those positions as opposed to, the proverbial basket weaving classes or whatever?
Yep, you could do that.
Because I've never heard that talked about.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Well, once again, we want to thank our speakers, Darren, Winham, and Taylor Caswell, for being here today. Also, our underwriter, Optima Bank and Trust. Our sponsors, Unitil, EnviroVantage, Service Credit Union, Donahue, Tucker, and Chandela. Our host, the Exeter Inn. Thank you to Tom DeSisto and Laura Starrett and the rest of the staff here at the Inn. And also to Images by Allie. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you soon.